Morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Today we're going to try something called Yesterday's Six Pack. And I've been doing this six-pack thing lately where I pull 6 records out, one from each cabinet. So I'm getting a good spread of eras, genres, geographies, and each day I'm getting a good sampling of different labels and sounds, and it's somewhat random from each cabinet, somewhat I should go to that label. It's been fun. It's a good way for me to have stuff available to play when I'm running the cafe, because I'm in the middle of doing something. Often, like, oh, I'm too lazy to play a record, I'll just play this one again, or I'll put on my some playlists on my computer. I play stuff all the time, but often it's the same stuff because it's what's sitting here. It's funny how, like, going to look at the cabinet seems like daunting at times, even though it's easy to pull something out. But having a 6-pack pulled, just like, okay, boom, I'll put this one, this one, that one. Kind of, you get through them. Sometimes it takes me 2 days, depending on how busy things are. But so yesterday's 6-pack and the hangover that it leaves. And so yesterday's 6-pack was fun. It was a series of 6 10-inches, like I said, one from each cabinet. And I'm going to start off with a little obscure label called Jolly Roger. And Jolly Roger is a kind of I don't say a budget label, but I think it kind of is. And it was from the 10-inch era. It's pretty much always calling 78 era stuff onto the 10-inch format. I don't think any of the recordings on this Jolly Roger label are current. I'm no expert on this label. I only have a couple, 3, 4 titles on Jolly Roger. I'm not sure they even made LPs. It might all be 10-inch stuff. Maybe some 78s, but I don't search 78s very much. So, but anyway, this is Count Basie and the President, Lester Young, on Jolly Roger, and it's classic, probably early 40s Basie, I'm going to guess. And on the back is this advertising for other titles on the label. Really low fidelity. The sonics are not good. And again, it's probably because it's not from a recording session. I'm almost wondering if this was some of the radio broadcasts that they're issuing here. Again, Lester was with Basie, I think, in the early 40s, if I remember. Maybe late 30s, some too. So again, it could be radio stuff. It could be. I don't think it's 78 stuff. I don't think the fidelity is there. The sonics are very low. There's a lot of parts where the bass kind of takes over. I don't know if it's Walter Page or I don't think it's Gus. I'm not sure who it is. It doesn't say. But aside from Lester and Count, Lester leaps in, Lady Be Good. I mean, it's a fun listen, but again, it's low sonic quality. It's a historical piece. The good news is you can find this for $2-3, sometimes in dollar bins and 10-inch bins in record stores. It's a cool cover. You got the saxophone and the piano, obviously, of the two guys are referencing. Like, there were sounds I'm like, where'd the music go? And I went and got closer. There was a bass playing by itself. It was quiet. I maybe should give it another listen with my boosting some levels here. But again, with the cafe, you kind of get distracted. The second thing I want to show you today, a record I love, by a singer I love, from a label I love. We're talking, of course, the Bethlehem label. The 10-inch, this is Helen Carr. And she has, I think, a 10-inch and an LP on Bethlehem. And she also sings on a few other people's Bethlehem 10-inches. I think she's on that one with the zebra on it. It's Max Bennett. Is it a Max Bennett record? I think it is. Again, it's the whole cast of Bethlehem West Coast guys on that record. And she sings on that a few tracks. She's a great singer. I mean, she's not a blues shouter. She's more of a European tradition, American songbook tradition. But she's got a fun, Tweety-like voice. Like, it's kind of light and floats, and but she seems like she has the chemistry to hang with the fellas. On this record, you have an incredible band. First of all, what an incredible cover. It's the Great Brook Goldblatt. That might be the Paramount building in New York. I'm not sure. It's obviously a New York City iconic kind of image. You don't get that many other places. But along with Helen Carr, you have the fantastic Charlie Mariano out of Boston, one of the great alto players of the bebop, post-bop era. Don Fodgerquist on the trumpet. I'm not sure, I can't remember where he's from, but he's a great player. Don Trenner's on the piano, Max Bennett's on the bass, who ends up joining the Wrecking Crew, being one of the real studio performers on the West Coast. And then Stan Levy's on the drums, who he wasn't long for the music business. He quits, I think, early 60s. He leaves music behind, maybe even earlier than that. But Levy's impact on the music was huge. Very great intellectual, great well-spoken guy. Whenever you hear that, I have a chance to hear Stan Levy talk, you'll enjoy him. But it's just a great session of West Coast talent playing real modern jazz with a great singer. So it's not going to be saccharine. It's not going to be the Capitol Orchestra and big studio. It's a jazz group. And I think more important than the singer for a jazz vocal album is the band that backs them. And boy, this is a fantastic 10-inch, one I'm proud to have in my collection. The next thing I want to show you here is by the great Teddi King, who she has some wonderful recordings over the years. Again, some at RCA, I think some are at Corral, which is a Decca subsidiary. But it's her recording here at Storyville, where she actually does 2 recordings. At least the other one's with Beryl Booker, the female piano player. But Miss Teddi King, and what's funny is that image, it looks a bit like a sister. I mean, it looks like a black woman. At least, most of the times I looked at it. But Teddi King is not a black woman in any way, shape, or form. And if that's her, Burt Goldblack's treatment of her on the photo has made it kind of obfuscated. And it's kind of hard to tell. But, I mean, the music went inside is what matters. Storyville was a great little Boston label by George Wein, the guy behind the Newport Jazz Festival and the Folk Festival. And then, of course, Newport's in Providence, Rhode Island area, just down the road from Boston. He had a club in Boston called Storyville, and then he makes a label where he starts issuing some of the works, kind of copying some of what Norman Granz was doing. And again, it's the musicians here that make this fantastic. Milt Hinton on the bass, absolute legend, and one of the great black stylists of the sound of the bass in jazz. Joe Jones on the drums, who played with Basie for years. Papa Joe Jones. I mean, so 2 iconic players right there. Jimmy Jones on the piano, who's less of a known figure, but a great player, and he's always been a great player behind vocalists. And then you have Ruby Braff on the trumpet, who is a white cat, but he plays with some ferocity. Reminds me of a Red Rodney. He's got some Dixieland roots in him, some Buck Clayton in him, but Ruby Braff's a great player. And again, you're talking a jazz group backing a singer. And her RCA titles are going to be more saccharine with the big label orchestra and arrangements and productions. It's all going to be rather stifled by the composition and arrangements. This is jazz. These are jazz players, and she gets to really loosen up and show her stuff. I'm going to show you this one again coming up soon, so I'm not going to delve into it too deeply, but this is Lester Young Trio Volume 2, and if I remember, is it Buddy Rich and Oscar Peterson? No, Oscar Peterson's on this one. It's Buddy Rich and Nat Cole. Nat Cole, and he doesn't go by the name Nat Cole on this, he goes by A.U. or some weird name like that. Oh yeah, A guy. That's Nat Cole. And these are early Norgran recordings on the 10-inch format. They don't even show the piano player. They show half his face, and looks like some hands on a piano maybe there. But you got Lester and you got Buddy with Nat Cole. So 3 members of the jazz royalty. I mean, just outstanding compositional ideology. They take the idea of the composition and they really add the layers of the jazz improvisation and the spirit of the blues. It's just a great, and of course that's Volume 2. Volume 1 has the colors inversed. The sky is red and then the peas is black. Red. Yellow. Jesus. Tough stuff to track down. Lester Young's Norgran stuff is tough to find. But great cover by David Stone Martin. Lester's young at heart here. He's got some vivacious playing, some great styling. I mean, he's the Prez, not for no reason. And you can see his pork pie hat and just, I mean, his loss to jazz was almost as big as the loss of Parker. And he dies right, and Parker was 55, Clifford Brown's 56. 59, we lost Lester and Billy Young. And so that generation starts to pass, especially the guys who have the harder lives. And, Lester lived to be much older than Parker. But I've become a bigger Lester Young fan. I've always loved Coleman Hawkins. Then I grew into Ben Webster. And I've always had some Lester, but truthfully, a lot of Lester Young's recordings are hard to come by. Because of when he passed, because of who he recorded for. A lot of his best stuff is expensive. Something like some of the Parker stuff. And the Parker stuff saw a lot more prominent reissues on the Verve label, and then Modern Box Sets reissuing it. The Lester stuff did get reissued on 12-inch LP with different covers, and you kind of lose the connection of when the sessions are from. It takes some real sussing out to know where all those early Lester Young 12-inch LPs are actually from. But I'm a huge Lester Young guy, and if you see this in a record store, wonderful. Next on the Vanguard label, on a red 10-inch, and I talked about this one not too long ago, probably 6 months back. Anthony Oretega, who has a record on Bethlehem as well, later in the 6000 sequence. Oretega was a great West Coast, I think he plays the tenor. I can't remember. It says, but anyway, fantastic player. If I remember, he has a drug habit, so he plays with a lot of that same intensity as some of the other guys from that ilk. Just a fiery guy. A lot of the Italian players, the Charlie Venturas, there's a great kind of crossover. They can play bebop with ferocity. They can Charlie Mariano. Those guys are really fiery players, fiery dynamic. The Italian bravismo seems to ooze out of their horn, and that lack of insecurity or lack of ever displaying insecurity or vulnerability, it just oozes out of these Italian guys. You have to love that kind of East Coast, early days of American melting pot kind of assemblage. It's fantastic stuff. I can't remember who's playing on this. Let's see what it says. It's probably a pretty anonymous group. Oh yeah, it's pretty anonymous guys, including a couple Swedes, it looks like. But I need my reading glasses, to be honest. That green font doesn't show up very well. I'm getting old. I need my reading glasses more and more. God dang it. There's 3 Vanguard 10 inches, and then the label folds. And they're all 3 great. Hampton Hawes and Pinky Winters are the other 2. The Pinky Winters one especially, that's a tough bird to find. If you see an old Vanguard 10 inch, don't pass it up. It's rare and it's valuable. And the last thing we're talking about, what we're listening to, it's a wonderful old Blue Note 10 inch by the fantastic Salvador. A great player. Again, I think with West Coast roots, I think he plays with Stan Kenton for a while, if I remember. He has a Stan Kenton Presents LP, so that would make me think that's almost for certain. I love Salvador's work at Bethlehem. His titles, I think there's 3 of them at Bethlehem. Just great post-bop, modern styling, great tone, clean notes, soft and moist, his tone. I mean, Grant Green's a little drier and a little crisper, more of an apple. He's a little bit mushier, a plum. It's a soft, gushy tone that kind of oozes into your ear. Wonderful playing. An early Blue Note by a guy kind of overlooked and forgotten. We certainly don't think of him as a Blue Note guy. And we have to remember that the 10-inch era was definitely a very different era for Blue Note in terms of roster of artists and the graphic design work and pretty much the whole kit and caboodle. Band-wise, you have a Frank Sokolov, who I enjoy quite a lot on tenor, Johnny Williams on the piano, Kenny O'Brien on the bass, and Jimmy Campbell on the drums. So again, it's not any Blue Note alumnus that we would recognize or know, but this is a great session. I absolutely love it. The post-modernity of it, it just sits and creeps and sits in your window like a cat. Just chilling. It might stretch a paw once in a while. It might yawn and kind of have a day, but we're just looking for a sunbeam right now. We're just looking for a sunbeam, and it's really great cafe jazz. jazz guitar in general is, but something like this is just a perfect accompaniment to the atmosphere of a day by the River Seine or the Guadalquivir. We can start naming European rivers, but we won't go any further with that. Fun stuff. So that was my six-pack from yesterday and some of the impressions they left me. And I feel like one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to do today's six-pack the next day, so I can talk about what I heard, what I listened, what I enjoyed. And I mean, it won't be every day, obviously, but hopefully this gives us some fresh content to kind of delve in new titles and new records and new artists, and just gives us a nice clean window to operate in for a while. So y'all be safe. Have a great day. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Jazz forever. Hope everybody enjoyed that 4th of July episode. I mean, I love America. I do. I love a lot of the people I've met in this country. It's very divided, no question. It has empirical behaviors that the people that solve aren't responsible for or even often aware of. But as a person who studies global events in history, you can see some of the behaviors of empire in America. And it's just how empires are going to behave. It's inherent on their behavior. But I hope no one was offended. I wasn't trying to talk down. I was just trying to remind people that freedom is more than just a flag. And we should be thankful for every moment of freedom we have. And there's little in this life more free than the oppressed people running through that door of great art and expressing their determination to not be held down. That's freedom. Peace.